Hi everyone. So this week we're going to be talking about adolescent perpetrators of violence. And so in this chapter, we're going to talk a little bit about some theories related to adolescent offending. We're going to talk about some of the consequences of child abuse and neglect and how it relates to adolescent offending. We're going to talk about just different things that applies to adolescent offenders of violence. So there's two different theoretical models that we're going to be talking about in this chapter. The first is the ecological model. Ecological model. It's one of the most common frameworks in social work, and it has a lot of research backed behind it as well. And so when we talk about the ecological model, it really, I'm a very visual person. And so if you kind of imagine these different rings, and so it starts with kind of the individual, parent-child characteristics, individual behaviors, witnessing abuse, things like that, relationship, right? So then it goes into a little bit more expanded level, family stressors, marital conflict, community levels, poverty, community violence, isolation, lack of services. And then we have the societal level as well, acceptance of violence, laws, policies, things like that. And then we also have the family systems theory. So this is also somewhat tied with the ecological model as well, but it focuses primarily on family behavior and seeks to identify the problems that are a consequence of dysfunctional relationship among family members. Oftentimes, lack of communication is part of the conflict, part of the problem. And then when we talk more about family systems theory and parents specifically, parents are the most critical factor in the development of children. And so many research studies have found that parental behavior can either increase or decrease an adolescent's risk for delinquency and other problem behaviors. So children who have witnessed violence by their parents or experience violence may learn violent behaviors and may also learn to justify violent behavior as appropriate. So I do want you to note that most abuse victims do not commit family violence. However, many suffer from long-term outcomes from the abuse. So when we talk about intergenerational violence, so this is the cycle of violence that occurs intergenerationally from grandparents to parents to children. It asserts that abused children are at the highest risk of becoming abusers themselves in their own adult relationships. Often, childhood abuse, a cycle of predictable self-inflicted violence may occur. So then you also have another piece to this intergenerational cycle of abuse. But I also want to note that it is incorrect to assume that all abused children will grow up to abuse their own children later on in life. Studies have indicated that this is not necessarily true. The majority of children who are victimized through domestic violence do not commit criminal acts as adults. Many conditions may affect the response to abuse, but both as a child victim and later in life as an adult. So one of the main factors that we see as being a reason for why children don't grow up to abuse if they themselves have been abused is resilience. And resilience is the manifestation of self-esteem, and so their own image and self-esteem. That's thought to be one of the factors that mitigate the negative effects of child abuse. So we really want to hone in on resilience and self-esteem with children, particularly those who have come from abused homes. So, the most consistent predictor of juvenile violence is childhood physical abuse victimization. So, if we have juvenile kids who are acting out, then one of the biggest predictors of that is themselves having experienced physical abuse. So, this cycle of abuse suggests strongly that those children who are abused and neglected, either physically or sexually, then grow up to engage in criminal activity at a higher rate than those who have not been abused and neglected. Again, this does not indicate that that happens with all children, but we do see a higher correlation with children who have been abused. There's several things that are important to help try and curb those numbers. The first is early intervention, proper coping skills, and peer relationships. All of those are important to both prevent delinquency and decrease the psychological distress of victims. So some of the things that we see in adolescent offending is the increased likelihood of repressed social processing, lower performance in schools, and relationship problems, distrust of others, problems with authority figures, a tendency to solve problems with aggression are also all risk factors of adolescent offending. Another large one that's talked about quite a bit in the textbook as well is animal cruelty. And animal abuse is defined as socially unacceptable behavior that intentionally causes unnecessary pain, suffering, or distress to and/or death of an animal. So we see childhood abuse of animals is predictive of violent crime offending at a later age, as well as committing property crime, drug offenses, public disorder offenses, and a range of antisocial problems as well. Another key kind of indicator is fire setting as well. So we'll see juvenile fire setters are often linked between juvenile abuse and their fire setting behaviors as well. Abuse and neglect is a risk factor that contributes to a more severe course of fire setting. And then also sexual offending. So frequently sexual offenders report that they began offending in their adolescent years. They make up more than 1/3 of the sexual offenders against minors that are known to police. Juvenile sexual offenders represent a diverse group. Some target only children, whereas others assault peers and adult females. Something else that we see is sibling violence as well. So research has suggested that sibling abuse may be the most common form of family violence with juvenile offenders. With adolescent offenders, violence between siblings is significantly underreported and underdocumented. Adults and children commit similar types of abuse, the physical, sexual, and emotional abuse as well with their siblings. And then parent abuse. So the last one that we're going to talk about today is parent abuse. Studies have revealed that a significant proportion of family violence is perpetrated by a juvenile against their parents or siblings. Research suggests that parent victims feel shame at their inability to control their children. Therefore, the problem is very significantly underreported. In one study, 80% of the youth who were violent towards parents indicated that their parents were violent towards them. And so data suggests that the percentage of parent abuse has increased and is likely to continue to increase over the next several years. And so this is definitely something that we will want to keep an eye on. So this is just a little quick overview of adolescent perpetrators. I hope you guys have a great week, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you guys need anything at all. Thank you so much.